Good afternoon. Just a little bit past 4:30 here in Cincinnati, and we are ready to start week three, chapter six and chapter seven. Chapter six being the last of our two motivational chapters, motivation and performance. Notice the subtitle. It's about the person job fit. And this is different from what's known as the person organization fit. Here we're trying to make sure we fit the right person into the right job. And then we will go to chapter seven, which is the first of our chapters on teamwork and teams. So as we go through this chapter, we hope to answer the following questions. What is the link between motivation, rewards, and performance? What are the essentials of performance management, often known as performance appraisal? How do job designs influence motivation and performance? And then finally, what are the motivational opportunities of alternative work arrangements? And we begin with what you see here, which is figure 6.1 in your text, which you can find at the bottom of page 122. This is the integrated model of, hold on just a second here. I want to try to get that from continuing to come up. Maybe we're okay now. Okay. And notice what we have here. We have motivation on the left-hand side, performance level difficulty. Remember, we talked about having goals that are difficult but achievable, and then satisfaction on the right. And we have our individual attributes and organizational support, work effort, and then we have some other things here, net value of intrinsic rewards, and an equity comparison, where we talked about equity last week. Several motivational theories that we've discussed: reinforcement, equity, expectancy, and I suspect, although it doesn't say here, we can also put Hertzberg's two-factor theory in this as well. Remember, that is the combination of job content, which are the motivational factors, and then job context, which really talks about the environment, and those are the factors that can lead to job dissatisfaction. Pardon me. And this just gives a little bit more here of the integrated model, talking about the four key theories of organizational behavior: reinforcement, equity, content, and then expectancy. Now, notice content here is a little bit different than what we talked about job content with Hertzberg. Here we're talking about individual differences, etc. Now, of course, even though Hertzberg didn't talk about individual differences, we have to know that individual differences there. We're not going to be able to motivate each and every person the same way. It's just not going to happen. We go back to individual differences that we talked about before. So this is something we need to, pardon me, we need to think about here. And we may need to pay attention to this. Now, what's the most important here of any of these? I think you could make a case for each and every one, but I prefer equity because if you have a person who feels that he or she is being treated inequitably, they're going to do something that is not going to be positive to the organization. And so I think that's the most important, but that's my belief. It doesn't mean I'm right. It's just the way I look at it. I'm a big believer in fairness and treating people that way. Now, we've talked about this before, and we don't need to spend a lot of time on the difference between intrinsic and extrinsic rewards. Intrinsic comes from within the individual. It's where he or she feels that they take great satisfaction with the work that has been produced, and don't need anybody else to come along and pat them on the back, give them some type of tangible reward, etc., for doing a good job. Now, when I say that, that is not to diminish the importance of extrinsic rewards. Even those who feel like they don't need somebody to do that want to be recognized sometime, somewhere along the line. Maybe they don't want to be recognized as overtly as other people are, but they do like to be recognized. And so it's down here in the extrinsic, something that's positive. It can simply be thank you, if it's said loud enough for everyone to hear. It can be a pat on the back. It can be a tangible reward of a bonus or something else, maybe employee of the month or employee of the week or a special parking place or something of that nature. And of course, it's done by someone else. It's not the individual. Could be the group, could be somebody else, but that's the individual thing. Now, pay for performance is something here. Notice that this slide, at least as far as I'm concerned, what's contained here in this slide is somewhat opposite or in opposition to what Hertzberg says. But we do know that pay can attract people. There are three ways that companies, determine their pay scales. They can lag the market. We don't have to say anything more than that. They can meet the market, and again, that's the same thing. It's better if I use the word competition than market. So you can lag the competition, meet the competition, or exceed the competition. And of course, there's pluses and minuses to each one of those theories. So notice here what the first bullet says, that it can attract and retain. Now, I have a little bit of reticence about retain because even if the pay is good, even if we're in a situation here where we're exceeding the market, exceeding the competition, if the job itself is not rewarding, pay doesn't mean everything. And so the person may decide, hey, I'm going to look for something else. And I'll take a job that pays me a little bit less money, assuming that I can still meet my obligations if the job's rewarding. So but we have things here. Pay does motivate people. And when we have problems with pay, it can be very negative. Somebody didn't submit your overtime pay, or your overtime pay wasn't approved, or something of this nature. And that's a downer, and that's where pay can be a demotivator or a negative factor. A demotivator may be wrong, but certainly a negative factor. Now, this particular slide talks about a number of different types, not so much the number of different types of pay, but different types of pay. And merit pay is tied directly to salary or wages. And that salary or wage increases based upon performance during as the slide says there, during a specified amount of time. Could be, but normally speaking, it won't be for a short period of time. If pay is increased for a short period of time, or because of something that was done in a short period of time, that usually translates to a bonus as opposed to a compensation, overall compensation, meaning here salary or wages over a long period of time. What this also does, as the next bullet says, is tries to instill, this is a motivational factor here, tries to instill in the workforce the understanding that high levels of performance equate to higher pay. So what it's saying is, hey, John worker or Sally employee, if you want more money, your performance has to say that you need more money. Just doing the routine, mundane, adequate, and getting along isn't going to cut it. You have to step up, as you will. And then bonuses down here, notice it talks about you meet benchmarks. Actually, you exceed benchmarks. And again, that's usually for a short period of time or for specific performance over a long period of time, a year, annual, that exceeded the benchmark that was perhaps the goal, perhaps, if we want to go that way, goal that was agreed to. So those are pay for performance. Excuse me, that's merit pay. And merit pay is tying the salary or wages directly to performance. You perform higher, better level, you're going to be compensated accordingly. Now, gain sharing is sort of like profit sharing, but it's not quite the same. Here, employees are given the opportunity to earn more by receiving shares of any productivity gains. Notice it says here that they help to create. In some cases, I have seen, not personally seen, but my wife was a registered nurse for a number of years, and she would get gain sharing when the hospital she worked for did well. And then I think that gain sharing was based upon a number of factors, seniority and number of years service and things of that nature. Profit sharing is different than gain sharing. And notice here that employees gain. I'm using the word gain here, not gain share. I don't want to make sure that you understand. I'm not trying to do that again. But employees gain extra money, if you will, because the organization has done well. And the organizations earn more profit, so then the employee is in a profit sharing plan. Now, criticism is exactly what you see below. Often, the increase cannot be directly attributed to the employee's performance, if you will. And that's probably true. But it's even more true that it cannot be tied to the employee's quote unquote lack of effort, lack of performance. So what that simply means is the company does well for whatever reason and has increased its profits. And so the employees in a profit sharing plan are going to get extra money in their envelope, usually at the end of the year, but it could be parceled out differently depending upon what the company wanted to do. By the same token, the following year, the profits have decreased. I'm not saying there's a loss here, but they've decreased. The employee's going to get less money, but we can't show or can't be demonstrated easily that the decrease in profit is directly attributable to what the employees did or did not do. So that's the downside to that. Stock options, exactly what they say. An employee is given an option to buy stock at a specified price, usually below market, for a specified amount of time. And they may cut that off and may not cut that off. Buy shares of stock at a future date at a fixed price. Now, usually that price is fixed now, and hopefully things go right. The shares will, or excuse me, yeah, right. The shares will. I'm not getting this right. I apologize. The price of stock, a price per share, is fixed today, and then the employee hopes that when he or she buys, the stock price will be increased. So let's say it's fixed at $10 today, and you can buy it up to so long a period of time. And 6 months from now, you decide to buy it, and the shares are worth $18. So there's an $8 profit there. And then, of course, if you decide to sell, you're going to sell at the higher price. Normally speaking, we see stock options with upper management. That's not to say there are not stock options in other companies that aren't lower, but mostly we see them with upper level management and not extending down as far as we might like to see. Employee stock ownership plans, ESOPs. This is stock that's given to employees. Most often here, they're going to be able to buy the stock at below the market price, market value, as it says here. The object of this is that once an employee becomes an owner, the mantra is that he or she will work harder because he or she's an owner and they want to share in the profits and stock going up, et cetera, et cetera. I think the jury is still out on whether this works or not. That's not to say that there's anything wrong with the stock ownership plans. This could be a long-term benefit for an employee, and it's a perk and things of that nature. Whether or not an employee actually works harder because he or she is an owner in the company, I really don't know, and I don't think there's any definitive evidence that says that's true. The next thing we come to is skill-based pay, and here employees are rewarded for developing relevant job skills. Now they can do that if they're on the job training, or they could do it through training conducted by colleges and universities or community schools, community colleges, etc. So they're being paid for acquiring additional skills. Now the next thing we come to is a thing that's always contentious, or at least I say it's always contentious, and that's performance management. And this shows us, this figure 6.2, which you can see at the bottom of page 127, talks about the performance management cycle. And we don't have to spend a lot of time here. What I say contentious is that I've never met a person who had to do performance appraisals. That's what is part of performance management. Who really liked to do what he or she was doing. You're writing someone's report card, and we don't do a real good job of it across the board. People need to be trained, and they aren't trained real well, and it's a task that has to be done, that nobody realizes it, and it goes on and on and on and on. And anyway, this is the cycle. And it must begin with the individual employee understanding what the standards of his or her job are. We start there with the left-hand side. And then the supervisor, manager, or whatever his or her position is, will measure the employee's performance against the published standards. We use job descriptions and job analyses and job specifications and things of that nature. Job description is usually what we're going to use based upon the job analysis. Now, we don't get into that in organizational behavior, but those are the things we use. Those are the tools we use. So we're going to measure the performance against the published standards. Then, once that's done, and normally speaking, performance appraisals are done once a year, the employee is going to be invited in to a feedback session, and they're going to talk about the results and his or her performance measured against the published standards, and then talking about what needs to be improved and things of that nature. Now, the way you start these things, and I'm going to get to another slide that may have it there, is you start the feedback session on a positive note, and then you get to the things that need to be improved. You either show or tell the employee how performance is to be improved. And the whole time you're doing this, you're focusing on standards and objectives, never on the individual. And then you use the performance appraisal results for a number of things such as promotion, perhaps salary increases, opportunities for training, and things of that nature. Now, here are the purposes, and I've already talked about some of them. And one of the things that I want to say about this first bulletin, evaluation, is that these should be benchmarks, published standards, and the employee is measured against those, not the employee, excuse me, his or her performance is measured against the published standards. One of the things that I want to tell you is, and I think that if you've been on either end of this performance appraisal business, you understand, and that is when you get to the feedback session, there should never be any surprises. You may say something to the employee that maybe he hadn't thought or she hadn't thought out completely, but the guts of what you say ought to be pretty evident to both of you. And then the last part is, first part evaluation, last part development. We talked about that in things for promotion opportunities and training and things of that nature. And here we're going into a little bit more of this performance measurement, output. You're measuring output against standards, actual work completed, and then activity measures. That can look at things like inputs and activities are related to what needs to go into making the outputs. Now, this is the performance appraisal, which is also part of performance management. And this is what we go through for documenting what we have said. Now, actually, the documentation should have been done before this. You get to this meeting, if you will, the feedback session, and you're just reporting the results of the documentation. These are some very interesting types of various types of performance appraisals, ranking, paired comparisons, and forced distribution. This is, if you will, the employee scorecard. Now, you're ranking people from top to bottom based on performance, and you shouldn't be rating one person against another. That's something that's not a good idea to do, even though forced or paired comparisons does this. Here, the rater compares each person with every other person. And then they come out with a rank order here, 1, 2, 3, 4. Forced distribution is more or less grading on the curve. X number of people will fit into various performance areas. Usually good average, and needs to look elsewhere. These are other various types of rating systems, the graphic rating scale. Most popularly used, it's because it's easy. We're going to get the graphic rating scale here in a second. That's the next slide up. It can be bought off the shelf. It doesn't take a lot of training to do this. It's probably not the best across the board, but as long as people know what they're doing and how they're doing, I'm talking about raters here, it's okay. Behavioral actually talks about linking the ratings to specific tasks that the individual performs. Can be done through a critical incident diary, which is listed here below, and it can be based on behavioral observation or behavioral anchored rating scales. This is a graphic display of a graphic rating scale. And usually there's a narrative that goes along with this. Notice it's almost like a checkoff thing. I've seen where you circle or use X's in this. And this is the particular person and work quantity, work quality, and cooperation. One of the problems with this scale is this rating scale, graphic rating scale, is that it is not quantitative. Even they say work quality. I mean, it really has to. You really need something here to be able to measure that, and you don't have it in the system. It can be used. It does work. People have to be trained, and there's usually narratives that go along with this. The next one is what's known as a behaviorally anchored rating scale, or BARS. Now, I also talked about a BOS, which is a behavior observation scale, very similar. And this shows here what type of performance is based upon what it is that the employee did. This is customer service and various things from 1 to 5. This particular scale that I have up here now has become very, very popular, the 360. And this is a combination of ratings or rating input, perhaps, best way to say it, from supervisors, from peers, from customers, if the person interacts with customers, with subordinates. And then normally there's a self-appraisal that goes in there as well. So this is supposedly a holistic type of rating, but for any rating, no matter which one is selected, we have to have the raters have to be trained. So you need your HR department to train raters and things that they can do and things that they can't do and what's legally acceptable and what is not. Now, this is a periodic question that we ask, and you just have to answer this for yourself. It's not a quiz. Think of performance management discussion you had with your manager, supervisor, team leader, for instance. You look forward to the meeting. And now, look at on the manager side. What would you change about the procedure if you were on his or her end? Which evaluation tool we've talked about would be most beneficial? I've kind of glossed over these because I'm not really as concerned, and you shouldn't be as concerned to what type is used, as long as the people who are using it are trained and they know how to use the various forms. If they if they don't, then there's a problem with that. So it doesn't make too much difference what system you use, 360, the BARS, the graphic rating scales, etc. It's as long as the people are trained and they know what they're doing with this. Now, here is the thing that's key to any of this. There's two criteria here. That whatever system you use has to be both reliable and valid. Valid means it is measuring what it is supposed to measure, and reliability says that it will produce similar results time after time after time after time. Now, those are the two criteria that are very important, and it's necessary to know in case you get into somebody wants to file a lawsuit. What do we have here? Now, large organizations have people who are industrial psychologists, which will help them develop this list. A performance appraisal, and so you just have to rely on it. Something you buy off the shelf may be a little bit suspect. These are measurement errors that could cause problems. Halo error. By the way, you can see these on. Let me get to the right page here in the text for you. You can see these on page 131. person rates another person on several dimensions and gives similar ratings on each dimension. Leniency, exactly what it says. Central tendency error, that's where people tend to go to the middle. I'll give you an example. When I was in the Army, the last rating system that we had in the Army, I think we were at -8 by that time. I mean, been through 8 iterations while I was involved in that. You had 3 choices to rate the individual, and you could rate him or her a 1, which as I remember was not good, a 2, which was satisfactory, and a 3, which was superior. Now, if you did a 1 or a 3, you had to explain that. So you saw a lot of people doing 2s because they didn't have to do anything. I never liked that. And anytime I did use a 2, and obviously I had to on occasion, I would always say what the reason. Everybody wasn't like that. Recency errors simply means what somebody did most recently is going to color the entire evaluation. Somebody did something really good today, and now I'm going to do the evaluation next week, and so that colors everything that person did. I'm going to base all my rating on that superior task performance was just a couple of days ago. And in personal bias area, we don't have to talk about that. That's something that really is problematic, and we have to work best to get out of that. Job design. Now, this is what kind of remember what we talked about with Fred Hertzberg. And here we're trying to plan and specify tasks that have to be accomplished for the task to be satisfactory. Job design strategies we have down here at the bottom, and we're going to talk a little bit about these as we go along, especially the beginning job simplification. Then we go to job enlargement, and job rotation is also put in that. Then we go to job enrichment. This slide 6.5 can be seen at the top of page 132. Job simplification is the routine Monday. We have to be careful about the presence of intrinsic work rewards. Very low here, notice. Degree of task specialization is very high, but it's routine mundane. We can see what job enlargement and job rotation are. It falls into the middle category, and a job enrichment on the end, which is what Hertzberg wants us to do. So at the beginning of this, what we talk about here, job simplification. Go back to this previous slide here, job simplification. And then we come to where that stemmed from is from the work of Frederick W. Taylor. He was the father of scientific management. And he worked on increasing people's efficiency, and he felt the best way to do that was to have the right tools and to break the jobs down into essential tasks. And so everything was broken down. It was easy for people to understand based on efficiency. So I'll give you a little bit of background here about Taylor. Many workers in the early 20th century were skeptical of anything management wanted to do as a way to introduce any ways to improve work efficiency. Workers felt, and with some justification, that management would take advantage of them. Fred Taylor provided the following example of his scientific management theory during his work as a consultant at Bethlehem Steelworks. This example shows how well his theory worked, but how workers felt that increased production while leading to higher pay were really for the organization's benefit. Taylor's worked with a gentleman by the name of Schmidt, that's C-H-M-I-D-T. I don't have a first name, I'm sorry. He was a pig hauler, and Schmidt worked at Bethlehem. His job was to move pigs of iron, 100 pounds, from the loading dock to a freight car. Taylor designed an incentive pay package for Schmidt and made tools for him to work with as well. It told him when to work and when to take a rest or a break. Schmidt responded positively, increasing his production from moving 12.5 tons of pig a day to 47.5 tons of pig a day, almost a fourfold increase. For his efforts, his pay increased from $1.15 a day, I did say a day, to $1.85 a day. That's pretty good size money for workers in those days, although by our standards, very low. As you can see or understand or calculate, Schmidt's pay increased substantially, but not commensurate with his production. His pay increased 61%. His production went up 280%. So while he was getting 61% pay increase, the company was realizing a 280% increase of production, which meant that they were going to be able to make more money. In addition, Taylor thought that workers should not receive more than 60% pay increases, for 61%. Otherwise, their motivation would decrease and they might agitate for more pay. The mantra of Taylor's day was efficiency and increased production. No thought was given to routine, mundane, repetitive tasks, that they really stifle innovation. Now, you'll find in the text that UPS, United Parcel Service, still follows many of Taylor's methods and the scientific management concept. This suits UPS because it follows what is known as a loyal soldier human resources strategy that focuses on long-term employment that is coupled with reducing operating costs. Now, employees are not highly paid. They are paid well, but they're not highly paid. But there are bonuses and outstanding benefits that go along with the pay. UPS is very successful at retaining employees. Extensive benefits package that includes health, dental, and stock ownership plans. It's an interesting concept, and they've been very successful with it. And here we are in the 21st century, whereas Taylor's work was done in the very early part of the 20th century. So job simplification is the scientific management at work. Notice here we talk about standardization of work procedures, and people are in highly defined, clearly specialized tasks. And so we don't have to pay a lot of attention. The mantra is increasing efficiency. But motivation is going to take a hit, so it may not actually do what it's intended to do. So then we move from job simplification. You remember the slide we looked at, the chart we looked at, which you can see at the top of page 132, to job enlargement and job rotation. Enlargement needs not a whole lot of thought process into it, because what we're doing is we're enlarging a job. And in the case that the slide says, we're taking two or more tasks that had been performed separately and most likely by separate workers, and we're combining them into making a larger job. Obviously, when you do that, you're giving the worker more responsibility, because now he or she is doing things that he or she wasn't before. Job rotation is a pretty simple concept. This is the periodic movement of employees from one job to another job. And when you do that, there are going to be different tasks, and you get other knowledge. They become more beneficial to the company, more beneficial to themselves, because they learn other things as well. Possibly a long-term benefit could be salary increases or bonuses or something of that nature. So it's pretty easy to understand. It's not something that's really difficult to understand at job rotation. Now we come to job enrichment. And this is a really uh, good piece of way to motivate people. Instruction that emphasizes employee motivation through the job. Remember here, this is Hertzberg. And so we're building something here, uh, and we're using things that, remember, Hertzberg said responsibility, achievement, recognition, so on and so forth, and perhaps even authority. Now, when we do that, we want to follow the job characteristics model. Remember, we talked about that back at chapter 3, Minnesota, I don't remember the job, JDI. And this is here, what we're doing here now, this is a person job fit. This is not person organization fit. This is person job fit. So you're matching the right person to the right job. And of course, what's necessary here with this is, pardon me, the individual has to be given the tools and resources that he or she needs to be successful. And of course, this all depends upon what we have down here at the next slide. And this is the core jobs, characteristics, critical psychological states, individual work outcomes. Now, I really don't want to go into what we have here in the middle and what we have on the right. We're talking about outcomes on the right and psychological states in the middle. Those are important. I don't dismiss them. But if you don't have what we have here on the left side, you're not going to get to what we have on the right side. And we have to challenge people by having skill variety, and there's some identity here, there's some significance, there's autonomy, letting the person alone to do what he or she needs to do. I'll get back to that in a second. And feedback, telling them how well they have done, and then if they need to improve, telling them what they have to do, and maybe perhaps even showing them what they need to do. Autonomy simply means that if you're going to do, job enrichment, you're going to say to the employee, okay, this is what needs to be done. Here's the end state that we want to achieve. We don't care how you get there. It's up to you to figure it out. Make the schedule, when the resources need to be here, when the raw material needs to be here, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We're going to let you alone, and we're not going to come back and harass you while you're doing this work. We are going to give you feedback. We're going to let you know what you're doing. We're going to let you know how well you're doing. But we're not going to tell you what to do. We're not going to stand over your shoulder and tell you what to do. And then look at the benefits you get out here. Low absenteeism, satisfaction at work. People are going to be have this inner motivation, intrinsic motivation to do well because that person's in charge. And then this just comes back here with the highly enriched core characteristics. We're going to have 3 psychological states. We're going to know that the work is meaningful. We're going to know that we're responsible for getting the work done. And then we're going to know what happened. We're going to know the end result. That's that's the business of the feedback. And then the moderators, we talk about this is what's going to influence this thing. We'll notice the things we need here. Employee growth need strength is high. So you're not going to put somebody in there that isn't able to do this. You may want to train them up to do that, but you're not going to put them in there until they're actually able to do it. And then notice here the last Hertzberg thing. Employee is satisfied with the context of the job. Salary supervision and relationships, which we all talked about. Now, here's a gut thing we have to pay attention to. Not everybody's job should be enriched, and not every job should be enriched. And that we can do job enrichment with teams as well as individuals. But we have to understand that Some jobs cannot be enriched. It's very difficult to do that. And so we shouldn't try to change something that really not so much can't be changed, but the change is not going to help it that much. Now we get into some other type of motivational things here, and we talk about alternative work arrangements, and there, a number of these are becoming very interesting in the workforce today, and people want to do this. So we're not working a traditional 40 hours. A couple of ways to do that. You can work 3 12-hour days a week and then have 4 days off. Of course, that's not 40 hours, it's 36, but you could do that. Some work 4 10-hour days. And the object of that is, as the slide says, to promote work and life balance. So here we get, what do we get? We get additional time off for the worker. Supposedly we get lower absenteeism and lower turnover. And then because of that, we may be able to attract highly talented people that are looking for some type of alternative work arrangement. Downsides is, notice it's fatigue. One of the reasons we have an 8-hour day today is because there was research done years ago that found that worker productivity started to decline after 8 hours on the job. Now, of course, we know 8 hours on the job isn't really 8 hours. It could be, if you're a wage person, 8 hours, and then maybe you get a half an hour for lunch, which is normally unpaid, and 2 15-minute breaks, a 15-minute break every 4 hours, both of which are not paid. And so you're there 9 hours, but you're actually physically on the job 8, and productivity start losing after 8. Matter of fact, some people even say it starts lessening after 6.5. And then obviously when you have this, you can have scheduling problems, and there are difficulties with that. People have to stop and think about what the issues are. So it is something that can be done. It probably doesn't work every place, and you have to determine that. And of course, there has to be employee input to that, as well as a managerial input, making sure you do that. Flexible work hours. This allows people to be at the workstation differently than everybody else might be, as long as they're there around core hours. So let's say your core hours in an organization are from 10 to 2. And so a person has to be at his or her workstation from 10 to 2, but can come in earlier or stay later, however they want to work that. And the object here is, again, to allow people to take care of appointments and things of that nature. It promotes, the theory is it promotes greater I'll get it out in a minute, greater job satisfaction, because people are able to do things and they don't have to worry about doing stuff after hours all the time. Again, the mantra is less absenteeism, lower turnover, perhaps more commitment. I'm using the word perhaps. But if the employees are opting into this and they want to do this, you probably will get that higher performance. Job sharing is exactly what it says. There's no secrets here. 2 people sharing 1 full-time job. How good that is, I don't know. We did have this when I was stationed in St. Louis. It seemed to work fairly well for the several people that I knew that were doing that. Everybody doesn't want part-time work, but it is good for people who do want part-time work. Notice there's supposedly less burnout, etc. And you might be able to get people who otherwise wouldn't work because they don't want to work full-time. Telecommuting, we know about that. We have to be careful with this. You have to have the right type of person to do it. Everybody is not set up to work alone. Some people need more structure than others. I had a student here some years ago who worked from home. She worked for Sara Lee Corporation, and she loved it. And she talked about what she did and how she did it. She was set up, and she knew when she walked across the corridor. I'm using that as a term here, into her workstation. She was at work. Everybody can't do that. So you have to make sure you have the right person. They have to be a self-starter and self-motivated and self-disciplined. That may be the biggest thing right there. Notice one of the advantages, the comforts of home. Well, the problem with that is you should have a designated workspace within the home, and that's work. And when you step over that line, you're working. When you step the other way, you're not working any longer. You're taking care of the children or cooking dinner or something of that nature. There has to be a demarcation, there has to be a separation, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, it does help people with their lifestyles and things of that nature. But one of the big issues here is isolation. You don't see the people you work with. So some moderation can be done. I have a friend of mine who works for AT&T, has been with them for a long period of time, and one day a week he works from home. He may have increased that. I haven't talked to him for a while, but I know he was doing that. And he said his boss was fine with it. So, and then of course, down here, family distractions. But as I say, if you're going to do this, once you walk across the line, you're either working or you're not working, and you can't do either of them. Part-time work obviously is going to appeal to somebody who wants to supplement his or her income. You need to be careful about this, about people taking extra jobs, because which flag are you going to salute on a regular basis? Yeah, part-time is lower labor cost. You don't have to pay as many benefits and things of that nature. The work relationship's not quite the same. Of course, somebody working part-time can have additional stress. Again, the thing about holding down two jobs, don't qualify for benefits that they may need, and probably are going to be paid less. So they have to take that into consideration. Most likely, two part-time jobs don't equate to salary and benefit that you would get at one full-time job. So you have to pay attention to that. I'm not trying to talk one way or the other about this, but people need to think about that. And again, I've already talked about people hold more than one job. There's loyalty. It's difficult being loyal to two different masters. The old saying that nobody can serve two masters. So we have to be careful about things of that nature. And of course, performance can suffer. Somebody become to work tired. How are we going to ameliorate that? It's going to be very, very difficult. And then working two jobs, taking time away from family. You don't have any leisure time. All those sorts of things can start to prey on a person. And then we're talking now about stress arising, and we know that there are problems with stress, and we really have to pay attention to stress and things of that nature. So at 5:25, we've come to the end of chapter 6, and we're going to take a break now, and we'll come back and start the first of our chapters, chapter 7, teams and organizations. So please come back at 5:30. Thank you. All right, it's just turned 5:30 and we're back. And we're going to do Chapter 7 now, Teams and Organizations. Synergy is the goal. And we hope to answer these questions as we go through this chapter. What are teams and how are they used in organizations? When is a team effective? What are the stages of team development? And then finally, how can we understand teams at work? And this gives us the definition of a team. Notice it starts off with talking about a group of people that are brought together to use their skills, normally complementary, to achieve a common purpose. And each person on the team is held accountable for helping the team reach its goals and objectives. Now, one of the things I want to do here now is to stop just for a second and to tell you that often we are guilty of interchanging the term team and group. They are different. A team has goals for which everyone is both individually and collectively accountable. A group is not like that. Most of us have groups of friends. We belong to social groups. We belong to work groups. We may belong to sports groups. And we need to make sure that we are not interchanging group and goal. Group and team. That's pretty important when we look at the case study, Chapter 7, The Forgotten Group Member. So I may, in my response to use the word team, but will explain why I'm using the word team. But just be certain that you understand that this was actually a group, not a team, and it needs to be approached that way. A team is different than a group, and we need to remember that. The groups that we belong to, normally we say that the people who are officers in that group are responsible for making sure the group achieves. And that's probably true, but not team. Everybody's accountable in the team, both individually and collectively. Now, this is teamwork here, and it talks about mutual relationships which become collective. And remember, as we said before, that everybody in the team is both individually and collectively accountable for achieving the group's goals. We can't say anything better. What the slide here also says is that people are put together, they have complementary skills and use their skills, so they're put to the best use to achieve what the team is supposed to achieve. Now, one of the things that we need to look at here is what the teams do. Well, they can do a number of things. They can be put together to recommend things. Now, this normally comes after a team is put together to do some type of investigation, and then they're going to recommend solutions or courses of actions or something of that nature. Teams that run things, they have the responsibility for, in some cases, leading the organization. This could be the senior executive team, not always called that, but certainly the senior executives in a team. They don't always use that term as I've just used it. And then they're in charge of making sure the oil gets where it needs to get so the machine moves along. and then obviously teams that make things. Uh, and that doesn't need a whole lot of explanation. Now we have, excuse me, I thought I advanced the slide. I didn't. We have formal teams. Those are people that are brought together by the organization. And they have a certain purpose to fulfill, and they're put together for various and sundry periods of time. And notice here, the team can be permanent or it could be temporary, and also vary in size. Now, you have a problem with teams when they get too large, and you have to be careful about that. Now we're going to get next into an area, and I want to be specific here. We're no longer at this particular point talking about teams. We're now talking about informal groups. They are members in an organization, because we're talking about organizations. They're members in an organization, employees, better way to say that. And they coalesce together for a specific purpose. But they're not sanctioned by the organization. There is no endorsement to do whatever it is they're doing. Now, I don't want to diminish these because we find we find groups like this all the time in organizations, and they can be very powerful. Notice the types they're talking about down here, friendship groups and interest groups and things of that nature. But we have to remember, if they're in an organization and they're in an informal group, they are not sanctioned by the organization. And they can do a lot of damage. But by the same token, they can do a lot of things that are good, and it behooves organizations to pay attention to these groups, to either allow them to continue, encourage them to do what they're doing if doing things that are beneficial, but to get them disbanded as quickly as possible if they're not. This particular slide talks about what it says here, social network analysis. And we can find this in figure 7.1 in the text. Let me give you the page number for that. I'm not the right page here. We can find that at the bottom of page 148. And notice again, these are informal groups that have some relationship, and we can find them in organizations. So we have to know that they're around, and we have to make sure that they are the type of group that is not causing us problems. Now, these are various and sundry different types of teams that we have in organization. We have cross-functional teams, problem-solving teams, and then employee involvement teams. Cross-functional, this is when we get people from different areas of the organization with different skills. They are brought outside their functional departments. Notice here it talks about achieving horizontal integration, and then hopefully to achieve better lateral relationship this way. And so that's something we need to think about, how those things are done. Problem-solving teams is exactly what it says. Normally speaking, they're brought together for not only a specific purpose, but also for a short period of time. Notice it calls on a specific problem or opportunity. They work together for a short period of time. They come up with solutions or courses of action, etc. And then normally they're disbanded. Does not mean they won't come back at some later time, but they're not. They're on a permanent basis. And then employee involvement teams are teams that get together to investigate issues that spread across the company. In other words, they're not specific to a particular department or an office, etc. But they tend to be workplace issues as opposed to work issues. Workplace issues as opposed to work issues. Talks down here about quality circles. That's probably one of the better known ones, and they meet, on a routine basis to talk about improving quality and things of that nature. Now, often the quality that they're talking about is quality in the workplace, not in the work setting, or quality with the environment as opposed to quality with a specific job. Doesn't mean to say it's not important. I'm just trying to make that distinction. Now, here is a problem that we have, and I was going to say we've talked about this before, but we haven't. Functional silo problems. And this usually happens when we're talking about a particular department. And the focus tends to be inward. And so we're concerned about the issues that we have. And we're not concerned about the issues that are outside here that are affecting all of us. We're only concerned with our department, the functions that we do, et cetera, et cetera. We really don't care what happens out there. So here, if you want to use an analogy, it's the tail wagging the dog. We're more concerned about what we're doing than we're concerned about what the organization does. And so that's a problem. That's what this is called, functional silo. It just means that we're thinking this way, vertically, instead of horizontally. This next is what we call here employee involvement teams. This could be thinking about quality circles. It's kind of a repeat of what we talked about before. And again, we're talking here now about environmental issues, issues in the workplace, not in the work setting. And I really don't want to spend a lot more time on it, other than to say that these are very important teams that meet. And they are hopefully looking at things across the spectrum and not doing this functional silo issue. Now, the next issue we want to talk about, or next concept we want to talk about, it's not an issue. The next concept we want to address is what is known as self-managing teams. And notice right there at the very beginning, the self-managing team is empowered to make all the decisions that are necessary for the team. This can include, not necessarily does include, but can include hiring, firing, rewards, setting work schedules, ordering materials, et cetera, et cetera. And these teams, self-managing, actually work without a manager or a supervisor. Now, we can talk in some respects of the team leader doing this, but that's not the same. The team leader does not have that same type of authority the supervisor or manager does. And so this has caused some problems for managers because now they have this team that's operating without assistance from other people. And of course, the other problems, organizations may not know what to do with them and how to handle them because they're outside the concept, if you will, of the normal manager-employee relationship. Multi-skilling. Simply means that people who are on teams, if we're into this thing, they're supposed to be doing more than one task. And it may be necessary for them to be able to perform all the separate tasks the team requires. That's what that means. And the object of having a well-functioning team, even when we want to get to self-managing team, we don't even have to talk about that as much, is that each and every team member is able to perform the tasks of some other team member. And so when you have somebody out, somebody can slide over there and pick that up. Now, this slide gives us the advantages of self-management teams. And whether or not, and I want to say this pretty sincerely, whether or not all these things are true really depends upon the interaction with team members and how well they're able to keep themselves together. So we talk about quality improvements or production improvements. Because we're a self-managing team, we should be more flexible, more nimble, and able to bring solutions to the forefront quicker and to have faster response time. If the team works well and has a good amount of synergy into it, we should see reduced turnover and reduced absenteeism. Why? Because the team is in charge of doing everything. And it doesn't have to look for some outsider. And so it requires all team members to be present and on the job, if you will, at the beginning, as well as at the end and in between. So we're not looking for someone outside. And when we do go outside, we're saying, this is an issue that we need help with. We can take care of the rest of it. But this issue we need help with. And so we need to pay attention to that. And then if everything works right with the self-managing team, we should have good job satisfaction and we should have good quality of work life. One of the slides I skipped over, and I did not mean to do that, is figure 7.2, which you can see at the bottom of page 150. And this is giving you a graphic idea of implications for managers for self-managing teams. So here we see we got the folks, the guys and gals on top, the middle folks, and the supervisor, and then the work unit. Now, when we move to a self-managing team, everything we talked about down here before, planning, scheduling, etc., is done by the team. And we notice here we still have a middle manager, but we no longer have a supervisor or first line manager. Things are done by the team, and notice that we have the team leader in the center, and he or she is in many cases considered to be a resource person, but does the scheduling and things of that nature. So everything's done within the team. And here we have this person on the left who now either doesn't have a job, or if he or she still has a job, they really can't be telling this self-managing team what to do because the team is self-managing. Doesn't need this first line supervisor, other manager, or whatever we want to call that person. Well, as you know, at least hope you know, and if you've heard me long enough, you know, whenever we have advantages, we have to have disadvantages. And so adjustments to self-management can be difficult. It's because many, many people in the workforce today are still remembering managers telling them what to do, and managers bringing directions from on high, if you will. Well, now we don't have that. We've cut out that extra layer, and so it may cause some angst with these folks because they now know that they're in charge. And so being in charge is a different animal. And they're not really too sure how to do that, how to adjust to that. So that may cause some problems. And of course, as we talked about here before, the folks that are higher up the ladder, managers, they really don't know what to do here because there's not a person that they normally talk to. You know, they normally talk to this person who's a supervisor or first line manager, and now that person's gone. He or she's not around to be able to talk to any longer, and now they're going to have to deal with the team itself. Now, perhaps they can do this by talking to the team leader. That may or may not work, but they have something here that they really don't know exactly what to do, and they don't know how to put their hands around it. So now we move from teams that we think that we know about because we can see them, they're in the workplace, we talk to them, etc., to virtual teams. And these are folks that use the computer to conduct meetings. They don't meet face to face on a regular basis. Do accomplish the same tasks, but of course, we have some issues there, and we don't have to worry about geography hemming us in. We're able to get past that. Now, virtual teams should, if we use them properly, bring to us the same type of advantages that we have with other teams. But one of the bigger advantages in bringing people together that, you know, bring the synergy and we can do these things, et cetera, et cetera. But here you're able to go beyond geographical barriers or boundaries and get the best people together. So that should be a benefit to us. Obviously, it's not going to be as costly. And if we do this correctly, time should not be a barrier either. And we can supposedly, I have to say that, focus on task accomplishment without being concerned about emotional considerations that surface when we're sitting across the table from somebody. I don't know how true that is. I've been in virtual meetings, but I've not worked in a virtual team, so I really don't have any personal experience that I can provide here. Obviously, when you're at a distance, there can be a loss of good personal relationships. And I'll give you the example of our course. We would have a different relationship if we were actually able to sit down together and talk face to face and work out the ethics and OB scenarios and the article analyses and the case studies, etc. For instance, article analyses I would do similar to what I do now. And when I started doing this many years ago, we'd have everybody would bring an article in, and the person would talk about the article he or she selected, given the parameters that we have, and then everybody would get a chance to chime in and say how they felt about it, et cetera, et cetera. Now we do that through the forum section, but we must admit to ourselves it's not quite the same as if we were sitting in a desk, at a desk, and we had the desks arranged in a circle, and we were talking to each other and things of that nature. So it is different. And of course, there's also a sense of isolation, and you do not get a chance to see how other people are acting and reacting emotionally, etc. So there's some loss here. And obviously, there are pluses and minuses. So hopefully, we're able to work through these losses. And we're, obviously, one of them is we can't see how people's reactions are. We don't get the cues and clues they go off. A lot of our talking is not done by what I'm doing now. It's done by hand gestures and face gestures and things of that nature. And we'll talk about that more when we get to the chapter on communications. Well, I always like this. I always like these things because I think that they are very different and very peculiar. And it talks about an effective team. Now, my question is to each of us, myself included, why would anybody want an ineffective team? That's just counterproductive, costly, and I don't know what else. So notice what they do at Ham here about an effective team. High performance level. Everybody is satisfied, and the whole team is viable. So that should put us in good effect. And then here are those three components spelled out a little bit more in detail, if you will. Here we're focusing on quality, quantity, and timeliness of what we're doing. Satisfaction. We the team members believe that we can do what we're supposed to do. Maybe you want to call that self-efficacy. And our participation, both individual and collective, will produce the desired results. And by doing so, that will be benefit not only to the team, not only to the organization, but to each individual. And the viability means that we like doing what we're doing. We like getting along. We're going to get along, and we have this synergy, and we're ready to move forward. And that comes to the next slide, where it talks about synergy. And synergy, as we're going to define it here, is different than this definition that we learned back in high school geometry, that the whole is equal to the sum of its parts. And here, what we're saying is that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. Here's the salient piece down at the bottom. The individuals in the group can accomplish more through teamwork than they could by themselves. And that's very critical to stop and think about. And one of the reasons it's critical to think about, and I want you to think about this in a context of being an American, and that is, we are an individualistic society. That's what we were founded on. And we weren't collectivists. We're not collective like the Japanese are collective, or in some cases the Chinese are collective. And I'm not using those as bad analogies or bad contrasts. I'm just saying that there's differences in how people approach things. And so we're an individualistic society. So we're trying to move in many cases toward teamwork because we can see the benefits of it. But it's difficult for us to, as Americans, to grasp that concept. The old saw from sports is there's no I in team. And we know that the teams that do well, and especially when we're talking about football and basketball and sports like that, do well when they have good interaction amongst the people that are on the team. Well, this is a laundry list here, if you will, of why teams are good for, or when is a team effective? Excuse me, why teams are good for organizations. And I'm not going to go through the whole list, but I want to put out some here that I think are interesting. They promote a learning atmosphere. Every one of us should continue to learn every day. Learning is something that never stops. And you should work at it that way. Yes, there is a period when you might say that my formal learning has stopped. I'm no longer in school. I've finished that part of my learning, but I still want to learn. I read or do something else that helps me learn. Collective expertise to tackle issues. We can bring more people together and pick each other's brains, if you will, to get to arrive at a better answer. Not necessarily a better answer, but to arrive at the best solution. We have support. We have a sense of security, and it still promotes individual growth. So we have a lot of things that can really help us with why teams are good for organizations. And many organizations have proved that. And there are a lot of people that like to work in teams. They feel that they really benefit from working in a team. Now, we're going to go here through some common challenges in teams. The first one is known as social loafing. I always say that you probably find social loafing more in groups than you do in teams. It's kind of hard to hide in the team. But this simply means that somebody's pulling back and not working as hard on a solution as he or she should, letting other people do the work. My example of that was when I was in graduate school. I was in a team exercise, and we were selected by the professor and put on teams. And one was a survival thing. And I had been through this experience before, or one very similar, and I knew the answer. And I didn't tell anybody I knew the answer, but I wanted to go through the process. So finally I said, well, here's the answer. I didn't say it that way, but everybody thought I was wrong. And I tried to convince them, and so no, it was, well, I did what a lot of people would do in a situation. I mentally checked out, and I allowed the team to do whatever they wanted to do, because I realized that no matter what I said, I wasn't going to influence them, or I wasn't going to be able to get them to do what I thought was right. Obviously, we have run into personality conflicts. When we don't have a specific schedule, when we don't know exactly what we're supposed to do, when that's kind of amorphous. And when we have those things ahead of that, then motivation will go down. Of course, we could have people who are on a team who are not motivated. And if we're not a self-managing team, we probably aren't going to be able to get rid of that person because we don't have that authority. And then I would change this at the bottom to say the team lacks direction, doesn't know what it's really supposed to do, doesn't know why it was constituted. Why am I here? What am I doing? Why am I into what I'm doing here? So all these things are challenges that teams have. Now, here's how, at least according to the text, you can ward off this social loafing phenomenon. By the way, this is not unusual. You find it all the time. And as I said, I think you find it more in groups than you do in teams, but it's still around. Key here is keeping the team size small. I would say to you, now please don't think about football or soccer or something of that nature, which have more than the number I'm going to say. But I think once you get past 10, you have trouble. and you don't have to stick to 10 because Reed said so. That doesn't mean that I'm right, wrong, or indifferent about this. I just think when you get past 10, you have trouble. You need to make sure that everybody understands what his or her role is and buys into it. If you don't get that, you're going to have somebody out here loafing. Make everybody accountable. And here's what we're supposed to do, and here's our tasks, and it's specific. And then rewards are contingent upon performance. And not only performance, but contributions. Now I'm using contributions here as being citizenship contributions and things away from task performance. Now, there is a danger here because teams usually get recognized, excuse me, I couldn't think of it for a second, recognized because of what the team does. And many times if there are rewards going on or with bonus, they're given collectively. So that's a problem. You have somebody that's not doing his or her fair share. And that's where a self-managing team can come in because say, hey, wait a minute here. Charlie or Susie didn't do what they were supposed to do. And so their amount of the bonus is not going to be as high as somebody else's is. Now, these are the stages of team development. And I want to point out to you that if you look in the text, you will find it as it is said, but in some places as we go through this, we will morph over to using the term group. So we have to be careful about this. Now, there are slides for each one of these things, and I'm not going to go through them specifically as each because we can take the one slide we have here, which is figure 7.3, and you can find at the bottom of page 156. And we can talk to these without having to go through each one of these things over and over again. Forming stage is who, what's what, getting to know, as a friend of mine would say, who's who in the zoo. And so it's no more than that. It's getting together and shaking hands and saying, I'm John Smith or I'm Sally Jones or whatever however you want to do that is. We don't have to go any further than that. And that's all that talks about. Now we go from the forming stage to the storming stage. And here we find that there may be cliques that have gotten together. We may find that there are some tensions that we hadn't thought about, that there's some other type things going along here. There's a lot of uncertainty. We may have, as I just go a little bit further, what I said before, in groups and out groups. We may have the minority, whoever that happens to be, trying to rule. And sometimes that happens. So we have to be careful about that. But we really don't know what's going on here. There's a lot of tension, as the slide here says. And we're trying to work through these, a lot of opacity here, if you will. Clarity is just not around. Well, then we move from the storming stage to the norming stage. And as the slide here says, we're trying to build relationships and move forward. But what I like to say is we're trying to get down to business here. We've gotten past this stormy period. We're trying to get down to business. But some challenges may still exist, and we may find in this forming stage that maturity may not be achieved here. And tasks may become secondary. So we're now into this relationship building, as the slide talks about. And we're more concerned, perhaps, with that, the relationships, etc., than we are concerned about the task. And so maybe we're off key in a way. We're off kilter. We're not doing what, we're not getting to where we want to get. And there's a danger in the farming area because when we're focused on these relationships and we've got the oil here or the grease to make things feel better because we're past the storming stage and we realize we need to get past that. Now we think that we've achieved something and we really maybe haven't achieved. So we have to be careful at this stage. Then we move to the performing stage, and we're doing what we were brought together to do. And we're going to stay on task and we're going to get it through the way we want to get it through and do the things we're supposed to have done. That's why we were assembled and why we're doing things, et cetera, et cetera. And then we move to the final stage. Now, by the way, I'd like to just stop and tell you here for a second. When I first got exposed to the stages of team development, we talked about forming, storming, norming, and performing. We did not talk about adjourning. That's the first time I was exposed to that. Sometimes after that, we got to this adjourning stage. And what this simply means is it says there, we're celebrating what we've done and take it a step further. We have done so well and we've gotten along so well, we've agreed that if we're asked to get together again, we're happy to do it. So this is a cycle here. And we show it here as in the text as linear, but I like to think of it as a cycle that we go through. Now this slide got team maturity criteria, where we have good working relationships. And notice what the difference between an immature group and a mature group are. And I don't want to go through all these, but let's go through some that are really more important. At least I like to think they're more important than the others. The first one is goals. Unclear. We don't know what we're supposed to do. Why am I here? Somebody tell me. This doesn't make any sense to me. I think that's very, very important. And then we have here participation. We have acceptance of minority views. And we have other mundane things like operating procedures. What that simply means is we have a rigid set you have to follow, or there's some flexibility that you can have. And then we need to have things like good feedback, and we have to have good decision-making models that we follow that are not dysfunctional. People understand what's being done, what's being asked of them, how they're going to be able to move forward. Now this is an equation, if you will, for team effectiveness. And notice here, quality of inputs determine the eventual team effectiveness, TE. TE equals quality of inputs plus process gains minus process losses. I like to say that, and it's important to think about this. And we have to have quality inputs. Now, that's very important to stop and think about. What does that mean? It means, we need to challenge assumptions and a few things like that to make sure we're on the right track. And if we don't have quality inputs, and that's not only resources, that's membership, team membership, and how they're doing things. If we don't have that, we're not going to be able to get to where we not only want to be, but where we need to be. And here we go here. We're coming back, giving a little bit more with this, giving some type of a graphic display here, if you will, of the graphic display here of team inputs, team processes, and then team effectiveness. And so we have all the resources here on the left. We've talked about clarity here and have good number of people, good composition, etc. And then how we interact. We have good norms. We're cohesive, roles clearly defined, things of that nature. And the accomplishments, task performance, member satisfaction, team viability. These all important type things. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to do what it is that we want to be able to do. Now, team effectiveness. Notice it's affected by the nature of the task. Little to no ambiguity, but also having adequate resources and adequate team composition. That's very important. Adequate resources. We're not going to be able to do the job if we don't have the materials that we need to be able to do the job. And we have to have good team composition. We can't do that if we don't have people who are skilled at doing the various and sundry tasks that we have to do. This is a team. We fit interlocking fingers here. We're trying to do something that way. And if we don't have that, we don't have this good synergy, this interlocking mechanism, if you will, we're not going to be able to achieve what we want to be able to achieve. That same thing true as an individual, but it's more important when you're in a team, because if you don't have that second bullet there, if you don't have clearly defined tasks, then you're going to have more people misunderstanding than you have when you have one person that doesn't know. So you're compounding the problem that you have. Now, this particular slide talks about the nature of tasks affecting task outcome. We have technical demands of tasks and social demands of tasks. Now, we're going to talk more about technical aspect and social aspect in Chapter 8, which we'll go over next week. But task complexity, routine tasks, we have some level of difficulty, and we need to understand what we're looking at here. So it's important that we know the nature of the task and what's expected of us. And in the social end of this, we can facilitate this by smooth interworking relationships. We have to be careful about egos, about controversies over ends justifying means or means justifying end. All of that is very, very important. We cannot say that the task importance overweighs or is more important than the social aspect. They're both equally important. Yes, we're going to get graded on how well we did our tasks, but if we don't have the social skills to be able to get along, go along, and do what we're supposed to be able to do, we're not going to be able to achieve tasks. It's as simple as that. One is just as important as the other. And we need to really pay a lot of attention to that. Now here we've talked about this a little bit before, and that's team size. We really have to be careful about team size. If we get too large a team, it's not controllable. Now, I'm not talking here about having a manager or first line supervisor. It's not controllable for a team leader. And we will find, as the slide says here, that remember, if the team increases in size, our satisfaction is going to increase up to a point, and it's not going to be able to go beyond that point. So in other words, the more we add doesn't equate to the old slogan, the old adage, the more the merrier. It doesn't work that way. And then team composition, we really have to have the right mix, the right makeup, complementary skills, people who can work together, check your egos at the door, things of that nature. This is the social aspect that I talked about before. Very important. We cannot denigrate that. It's as important as anything else is. And we have people that don't get along, can't get along, then we're not going to be able to do what we're supposed to be. And this just reinforces what we just got through saying. Team composition actually is the same as what we said before. There might be something else here that we've added, another thought or two, but certainly we're not breaking any real new ground here. The FIRO-B theory, F-I-R-O and then B, just is a theory that's used to identify how people are interrelated in groups and how they relate to each other. And then we have individual differences, of course, and those do need to be expressed, but we need to make sure that we have feelings of inclusion, control of the group itself, and notice the last word, affection. Have to be able to get along. Status is simply what it says. This is where a person feels like he or she fits in, his or her importance, maybe in a rank order, if you will. And then status congruence. This is when the person's relative position within the team actually equals to a position that he or she holds outside the team. So in other words, his standing is here, pardon me, standing outside the team is here. It's not here or there, because that's going to cause somebody to feel differently than he or she had before. Team diversity is always important. You will get teams that actually perform better when you have a diverse team membership. You have homogeneous teams and heterogeneous teams. Homogeneous folks are very, very similar, if not actually alike. Now, I'm not usually talking here about the demographics that we usually talk about, our age and gender and race and ethnicity, although you'll have some of that, but perhaps where their backgrounds and things of that nature. A heterogeneous team is much different. There's no real commonality here. And across the board. And members says are very dissimilar. And you're probably going to have some issues at the beginning in making this diverse team work. If you can get through that beginning, this latter group is going to give you better results than the former group. Why? The former group is alike, and they're going to reach a conclusion that they like. And they're going to say, hey, we got here, we all like this, step down next case. But the diverse group isn't going to get there that quickly, and they're going to have all kinds of different thought processes. Some people will be coming off the wall, so it's a different group. Excuse me, different team. It's a different synergy. And so what you have to understand is that if you want an answer quickly, you use a homogeneous group. If you want the best answer and you have time to wait for it, you use a heterogeneous group because they're going to bring in perspectives from all across wherever. So we need to understand the difference between diversity and consensus. Consensus is not where everybody kind of agrees. Consensus is where people can say, okay, well, I don't like everything in this, but I can agree to this. Diversity, we have to work with diversity. We have to make sure we understand it. We have to know that diversity is actually good for us. But we have to also understand that when we have a diverse team, there are going to be growing pains, and we have to be ready to accept that. This is figure 7.6, which talks about team development stages and time, and then how we're going to be able to progress through what it is we need to progress with, diversity, stages of development, etc. And notice here we have effective team process and gains and losses up to the top, ineffective down here, and we have this critical zone. And we have to pay attention to this. It's going to take us a little bit longer with a diverse group, but we probably are going to wind up at the better. And this is the last thing we want to talk about here, team dynamics. Forces operating within a team that affect the way the team members interact with each other and how they work together with each other. So these team dynamics, and this goes into task performance and the social part and all things that we want to talk about in that way. Well, that brings us to the end tonight. We spent the last couple hours discussing teams. We're going to move to to chapter 8 next week, which is teamwork and team performance. And then we will move to chapter 9, decision making and creativity. So I want to thank you for your attention tonight. I look forward to speaking with you again next week. Thank you and good night.